We started the meeting, we're just going over the minutes from our last meeting, and once that's over, I'm quite sure Heidi will do some introduction, so everyone kind of knows who's on. You guys can hear us, right? Okay.
I got it on.
Oh, she's good. Oh, I'm not.
Yep, because now we have Andrew.
Yeah. So you guys having a hard time hearing us, Bristol County?
Hi, sorry, we're just having technical difficulties, but we're trying to work it out.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
And we also, if you want to move that mic and the camera over, because they have trouble with audio of these.
Oh, the big thing is the mic and camera, right?
Two separate.
Oh, well, the small one and the big one, right?
Yeah, that's right. That should, I think, help them hear us better. Yeah.
I don't wanna fall, this to fall because I don't know how much money this costs and I don't have to pay for it, okay?
Or we can maybe put on that table there.
That should work because it's just it's an hour goes around.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps.
Do you hear us better or worse?
I think we can hear you a little better now.
Okay.
Okay,
It's moving. You guys are very well.
All right, so, okay, I'm sorry.
I can get speakers for next time, just so you
I
know.
know, yeah, it's fine. Thank you so much.
They're still trying.
Yeah, and I don't know if we can turn the volume up on the television. It's underneath the television, one of those remotes. Technology, we're still learning. Maybe put it in a chair, Chris. The mic. maybe.
If we get this one piece of it on the table, that'll help us get it to the desk.
Probably do that television up to, did it, that is still on anybody, I think that's, you may have to move it.
Yeah.
It's still. Usually it's kind of move the television more, yeah, it up more.
I think, all right.
Technology.
Technology. If this works, it you were muted.
I should have
For some
been.
reason. Yeah, that's all right.
Okay, all right,
We
Heidi,
think
sorry.
Okay, we think we're all set now. So we have, on screen with us, we have, the Bristol County Sheriff's Office. They are, off video, they're having some technical difficulties.
Hold on, I'm trying to get Jim Kylie's in the waiting room too, so we're all trying to figure out like where's the waiting room? I can't see anything here.
I know, I'll show you.
So we apologize, we're someone.
So try, participants.
So I think it was
No,
here.
go to the, like the arrow of participants, see if it will.
Going to get down, there's no.
No, he's not there now.
Okay, so I don't know what happened. Okay, we'll figure it out.
This is one of those hybrid meetings where we have some folks in the room and some folks on the screen, and undoubtedly one group or parts of a group are going to have difficulty. So we're just gonna keep rolling and try to capture as many people. Okay, Dartmouth community is watching the, Dartmouth media. is
Okay,
watching.
thank you, thank you.
All right, so we'll get started. I think the sheriff's department is still on. They just have their video off. So we'll just quickly go around the table. I'm Heidi Brooks. I'm the DAART chair and a member of the select board.
I'm Dolores Joseph, I'm the DART co-chair, and I'm also the youth advocate for the town.
I'm Matthew Dancer, I'm the engagement coordinator for the Dartmouth Council on Aging.
Peter Catalan, I am a member of the group and I am a member of the Dartmouth Select Board.
Matt McFarland, representative of the Dartmouth Police Department.
Maura Ryman, public health nurse from town of Dartmouth.
Chris Show, Director of Public Health for the town of Dartmouth.
And Chris Vitale, interim town administrator or co-town administrator for the town of Dartmouth.
Okay, Andrew, if you can introduce yourself also, please.
Sure, Andrew Christofoli, Director of Athletics and Wellness at Dartmouth High School, and I am representing Dartmouth Public Schools.
And Mr. County Sheriff, I know your camera's off, but if you're still there, we would love to know who's in attendance.
On now.
No, they're off, so they got locked off, so maybe they'll come back on. Okay.
All right, so we will, taking a look, other than the, elevation of office of Chris Vitale, right? Did anyone have anything else on the minute? Yes. Comprehensive, that covers everything we talked about. Have a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion.
Thank you, Matt. Second? Thank you, Laura. Any discussion? Okay, we'll vote. All in favor of accepting these minutes?
Aye.
Thank you. I want to start with the International Overdose Awareness Event. So we had been doing sort of simultaneous meetings. We had a much larger group that we were working with, the Greater New Bedford Opioid Task Force that we were working with to do our second annual overdose awareness event. And we were moving along, and New Bedford has had a change in their health department and their structure. And New Bedford would like to go and do their own, which is fine. So at our last meeting with them, we pivoted what we had been planning. And I'll just let you know that Dartmouth had said that we would be the Thursday before Labor Day weekend. So International Overdose Awareness Event is always on August 31st. That's the International Day. This year, that happens to fall during Labor Day weekend. And last year it also didn't, it was Labor Day weekend, and so we just decided going forth, if we are the Thursday before Labor Day weekend, whatever date that is, that will be our event. And so just for your information, New Bedford is going to have their event on August 27th, which is the Tuesday. Taunton is planning their own event for August 28th, the Wednesday. We will be the Thursday, and both Marion and Fall River will hold theirs on Saturday, August 31st. So, knowing that we're not only looking at a similar audience, but we're also going to be pulling from a similar resource structure. Dolores and I made an executive decision in order to have a successful event. So our event this year, the International Awareness Day theme is Together We Can. And rather than having our event in the stadium, which I have not told DPS, we do have the authority for the stadium, but I think we're gonna be a much smaller event. So we're looking at doing it right in front of the town hall. So we wouldn't have anyone park in the front of the town hall, but we'd have our equipment in front of the town hall. As I said, it's Together We Can, and we chose to focus on the impact of siblings. And if you remember, Tuesday, DeRocha spoke last year as an impact of a parent. She was extremely powerful. Tuesday's daughter has agreed, and so she has lost both of her brothers, and so she has agreed to speak that evening. And the other speaker that I'm waiting to hear back from is Joanne Peterson, who started Learn to Cope 20 years ago now. And they have, since COVID, they have an offshoot group, which is, a group about grief. So still coping, still grieving, still learning. And so I'm waiting to hear if that date is available for her to come. So very small. We are getting purple flags, very small flags that we could stake in the ground, and so anyone impacted can write their loved one's name on the flag. And we will again use the purple lights that we did last year in the front of the town hall. And we keep the flags there. I'm hoping through September, but it really depends until the landscapers come through with the mower. Our thoughts on tables that evening, focusing again on things that are popping, which would be fentanyl awareness, a syringe drop off. So what I'm hoping is we can have one of the large tubs outside and then have the ability to have folks pick up the small syringe cans that evening. Child and Family Services has just purchased a mobile van, and we were hoping to have it there. However, it will not be built by that date in August. So we won't have them. Naloxone availability and naloxone training. And we are going to have, if Learn to Cope can come, then there'll be a resource table from Learn to Cope. And then Dolores has resources from her office. And then the one coffee truck is, I'm going to get JoJo's coffee truck. She also has pastries, and that would be available. And that, all that will fit in that front, the front parking lot. And I think it'll be small and intimate, but it will raise the awareness by having it on the front of the town hall and publicizing it. And there are options for other events, so people who need to go to more than one event can do that. If they're from other communities, they can come to our event. But I think that we will, it will be absolutely fine as we have pivoted to a smaller venue and smaller outreach. One of the things that we talked about is in August on the rotating bulletin board and the DCTV, is to publicize our event, but also to put up data about overdoses in Dartmouth as part of that. So fatal and those that have been saved by Narcan. Typically, the chief does send me something. I haven't gotten anything in a while. I just wanted to share what I had gotten in New Bedford when I went to their meeting. Their meeting is, they've been sharing this data for years. So they track it on a monthly basis. And looking at May of 2023, they had 34 non-fatal overdoses. And this year in New Bedford, they had 18 non-fatal overdoses. Last year, they had 5 fatal overdoses in the month of May. And this year in the month of May, they had 2 fatal overdoses. Their numbers are significantly down every month, non-fatal and fatal. So far, when we met, which was last week, the month of June, they had 11 non-fatal overdoses and no fatal overdoses. And then they are able to break that down. So of the 18, there were 8 in the north end, 4 in the west end, 6 in the south end. The hot spots that they identified, they had 2 overdoses at Chuck's Liquors, if you know where that house is, and a sober house on Penniman Street had 1. The west end, the bus terminal, St. Luke's, and the downtown library. And at the south end, the County Street bars and New Life Church parking. was, one of theirs. They also do a breakdown of non-fatal overdoses, so of those 18, they were able to make contact with 9 overdose survivors. 3, they made contact with the family or friends. 1 person was homeless, 1 was from out of town in Somerset, and 4 people had given incorrect addresses. As far as the risk outcomes, they had 14 people that they were concerned. 1 person was from Suffolk County, so they did reach out to Suffolk County. 1 person had a bad address, and 1 they were still attempting. Just giving over the data from the record. The high-risk individual, a 36-year-old white male. This is the level of detail they do. He has a drinking problem, is his priority, mixed with substance abuse. He tends to call around 2 a.m. to the police department for a ride home. And the police department in New Bedford gives him a ride and uses that opportunity to talk to him about his habits, but have not made an impact in any change. The breakdown of the non-fatal demographics, 9 were white, 5 black, 3 white Hispanic, 1 black Hispanic, 13 were males, and 5 were females. The largest population was 30 to 39-year-olds, there were 8. The next population was 50 to 59-year-olds, there were 5. Then 40 to 49-year-olds, 3. 1 was over 60, and 1, the age was unknown. This was a change in the past for many, many months. The date with the most overdoses had been Thursday, and the hours of the day were 3 to 6. And it was definitely in the areas where people were being paid either cash on a Thursday or being paid by a check that they then took to the bank and got cash. So that immediate gratification. But this last month, the days of the week that got the most traction were Mondays and Saturdays, not Thursdays. And the time of day was split between 8 a.m. and noon and 4, and then
8 to 12.
8 to 12 at night. They were split 4 each. And the fatal overdoses, there was 1 white male, 37, 1 white male, 61, and they overdosed on a Monday and a Saturday. So different data than they've collected in the past.
Any input from the Bedford as to why they believe that the numbers are down so dramatically?
No,
They didn't have it.
no, that was discussed. They're looking at an overall trend. They're also looking at whether things are not being reported. They're having an issue as well. When we received the Dartmouth data, it did not take into consideration anything that happened at the sheriff's department, so that's one of the reasons I wanted to see them here. And we didn't get any information from UMass Dartmouth. So Dolores has reached out to UMass Dartmouth, and we're trying to get someone to rejoin our group and see if we can get data from UMass Dartmouth, because they're not sharing with the police department.
And to piggyback off of that, the police chief at UMass Dartmouth, I actually met him at an event, an NAACP event, where I also met the sheriff, talked to them about the meeting. He was very interested and wanted to be part of it, so I did email him. And someone from the department was supposed to show up, so maybe something happened, but they're very interested in being part of this collaborative, and also Bristol County Sheriff's Department is very interested, so. That's it. Oh, piggyback off that, and I know you had something more too, about the events, the overdose, international overdose awareness events that are happening in surrounding communities. Even though we're not collaborating with any other towns or cities, what we discussed at the meeting with New Bedford, the Greater New Bedford Community, Greater New Bedford Opioid Task Force, is that we would have a shared calendar so that it goes out to all of the communities, so that everyone knows when everyone is having an event. So if people wanted to attend multiple events, it would be publicized. So they're willing to take our information to make sure that it's on the calendar to share with the surrounding communities. I think Laura had a question too.
Oh, yeah.
What time of the event?
That we hadn't nailed down. The time of the event, just so that you know, in New Bedford is 5:30 to 8. And we did last year 5 to 8, 3 hours was too long. So, we'll have a lot less setup. And I think 5 to 7 would be plenty.
Okay, great.
8 was helpful last year, we went later because we were doing bags that need to be lit up and it's still daylight. But this year we'll just have the flags, so ending it at 7 won't be something that we'll be missing.
Another, get back to use, I heard an interesting conversation on NPR, and they were noting that drug use amongst teens has decreased, and they are attributing that to social media, that kids aren't gathering together in person, that they're all at home on their phones. And so on the flip side of the drug use being down, mental health issues are on the rise.
Yeah, that's been going on. So
They only go hand in hand.
they do. Sorry, I just wanted to interrupt. There was an email from the Bristol County Sheriff's Department because they were having technical difficulties with Zoom, but they hope to be in person at the next meeting.
Oh,
So that's why they're not.
All right, so one of the things I will revisit with Andrew being on screen is something that we had talked about previously. Andrew and I had talked, and recently I understand that you've had a conversation with David Tadalong. So one of the things we're looking at is supporting the students. And I know that Dave also said he had spoken to Officer O'Connor, Sergeant O'Connor, or Detective O'Connor. What is your title? Sergeant, okay.
Take this up.
Right, so you're gonna go all the way up the chain? All right, you're taking it for the team. So the question back to, or passing to you, Chris, is, support at the high school in particular. We're looking at supporting both the middle school and the high school, and I met last year with you and Ryan and Ian Flint, about talking to parents of athletes and musicians. That was one. To do some education during the PACE period was another piece. And then we were talking about the largest concern at the high school was vaping. And I know that now you put in the vape detectors in the restrooms. And so I didn't know if you wanted to tell us more about how the vape detectors came about as being a thing. And also, excuse me, how that worked out.
All right, can everyone hear me? So we'll start at the end, the vape detectors. So in full disclosure, I was not involved in that process at all. I do know that they were installed in bathrooms, and there was pretty much, I guess you would call it a pilot program to see how it went, what information could be gathered, and then administration or building administration and district administration would decide, with the information that they gathered, what the best approach to take to remedy the situation. The only time I really got involved with a vape detector was when we had an opposing team come into our building to use the bathroom, and the vape detector went off 2 or 3 times during their 15 minutes in the bathroom. So I had to get involved with that piece of it. But as far as the day-to-day operations of the students in the building during school hours, I'm not involved with that. But as I mentioned, it was put in as a pilot program, to gain and acquire information and data to be able to really remedy the issue. The word got around pretty fast with the student body that there were vape detectors that were in the bathrooms, and they are overseen by our assistant principals in the building.
So not knowing that, I mean, that was a great, I know that was a mid-year that they were installed, and so to collect data. does the high school and or the athletics have a vaping policy?
Yes, so we follow, in the athletic piece, we follow our chemical health violations out of the MIA handbook, which is the governing association of athletics in the state. You know, if a student athlete was caught either vaping or having apparatus on them, and then going through the due process, if they are found guilty of said violation, there are attached penalties in the athletic program. So it is progressive. So in between the first day of school and the last day of school, once a student is designated an athlete, meaning, you know, if they start in the fall and they're designated athlete for the entire school year, if they were to vape or drink alcohol or use steroids or any other of those substances, like I said, there are violations of 25% of the game season that they miss. Now, they can still practice and be around the team, but there are restrictions as to their game day participation and, you know, I guess representing the school on game days. If like they couldn't wear their uniform, they would have to wear something Dartmouth, but not yet like their participation gear. And again, that's 25%. And if it's a second time, you know, it advances up to 50%. Fortunately for us, that's not something that we see very often. I'm not ignorant to think that it's not going on, but I also, in my 5 years in the position, we've been on the lower end of violations of the surrounding schools that I'm in constant conversation with throughout the year.
So I have a question. So if you do, so you said it's the first offense is 25%, the second is 50%, but is there anything that goes hand in hand, excuse me, hand in hand with that? If a student is using, is there any type of support that the school is offering, like mental health support, resources, for the student or for the families? Outside of sports, just related to, the drug use or whatever, alcohol or opioids or whatever it
Well,
is. Is there any type of-
besides the built-in pieces to the rule where, hypothetically speaking, a student is drinking and it's a second violation, there are programs that they can explore and participate in that would lower the consequence just a tad. But as far as if I was a student athlete and I was vaping in the bathroom, besides the school penalty that I will be assessed and the call home from our administration, and then my follow-up with student athlete's family, there really isn't there isn't any further step per se, other than this is the penalty. You know, has guidance gotten involved? Yes, last year they did in a certain situation in which there was the parent outreached about the possible addiction to, and again, our guidance department stepped in and assisted in that matter. But as far as I guess the follow-up educational piece outside of our existing wellness curriculum, there really isn't. There probably should be, but there currently isn't.
Thank you.
Andrew, can you talk about the wellness curriculum? That's at the high school?
Sure. As far as so health and physical education is a 4-year requirement in the state and also a graduation requirement. Now, how you present or kind of roll your program out does have some flexibility. So we do have for students, I should say, students that are sophomores, freshmen and sophomores, their freshman year, they partake in wellness green and wellness white, which is their sophomore year, or vice versa. I can't remember if it's white or green, but it's 2 years of wellness, which there is a set curriculum that has that, and again, I'm certainly going to probably forget certain things, but you have your fitness component, your nutrition component, your mental health component, your substance I don't want to call substance abuse, but substance, whether it's alcohol, drugs, tobacco, marijuana,
Maybe substance awareness. Maybe that's-
awareness. Yep, absolutely, the educational awareness. And again, that's partnered with a physical education component. So if you can kind of think about it in this way, where it would be, 2/3 of health and 1/3 of phys ed, kind of a structure. That's what we do have. And like I mentioned, so kids at the high school would have health education their freshman year and sophomore year. Now, albeit it is for one semester each one of those years. So there's 90 weeks of 90 weeks. No, I'm sorry, not 90 weeks, 90 days.
Oh,
90
that's a
days.
long time.
Yeah, 90 weeks is a long time. 90 days of wellness. And again, they either are taking it semester 1 or semester 2 the freshman year, and then again during their sophomore year. When you get into junior and senior year, it's more or less physical education based. Without the health component.
Not the health piece, okay.
So Andrew, is there anything that you can think of for, I know one of the things they talked about was bringing someone in during the PACE period, or to have speakers for the students, and that would be during the PACE period. Looking ahead, do you see something like that still in need at the high school?
I definitely think so. I mean, I actually earlier this morning when I was in school, and I apologize for being a couple minutes late because I was driving home to be able to catch the meeting on time. I actually dealt today with a student athlete with eating disorder, and how that kind of, as we're pulling back the layers of the onion, there's more than one that is suffering through that situation, and there's some
Yeah.
adjustments that we're in the process of making, especially with the educational piece, and including South Coast hospitals with pushing out whether it's literature, or whether it's guidance and direction, whether it's guest speakers, or so on and so forth. That's going to be a moving target that we just started today. So do I think from the section of substance abuse? Absolutely. And I mean, we already have, the state association already has an opioid informational requirement in which we provide that literature to families as they sign up online. Now, the catch is it is a sign off online. So there's no guarantees that the literature is being opened up and read. But there is that piece in there, because again, rewinding back a handful of years, some of the data and research found that student athletes that were getting addicted were from existing injuries that they were trying to fight through, and they were prescribed pain medication, and it evolved and snowballed into something a lot more dangerous along the way. So that's why the state has put that piece in. But to answer your question, Heidi, yes, we could definitely use more education behind that. I think there's a variety of different avenues to explore. I know that to your point, when you came in last year, we talked about during PACE, possibly doing some extra things with student athletes and members of the music department, and even with drama being the 3 largest extracurricular activities that we offer. And there are kids that their day extends beyond 2:15 on a daily basis, and it is stressful for many of them to make sure that they're getting all their academics done, along with following through with the extracurricular commitments that they have. So I do think that there's a target audience there that I would say is probably a little bit more at risk than some others. But then again, they do have, a structure is a very important piece of this too. And I think they all have structure, but trying to, fit in everything that they need to do in 24 hours is definitely challenging. But we could use, either guest speakers, you could do that during PACE. We could also evaluate, our current curriculum, and we're always looking for ways to improve. And, really attack the current issues, because again, what we battled 3 and 4 years ago may be a little bit different today, then it'll be a little bit different 3 or 4 years. So it's kind of a living and breathing document, and tweaking it as we need and fulfilling our state standards that we have to cover educationally in the classroom. So there's definitely some things that we can explore. At the high school level, Mark Gaffney is our lead teacher with wellness. He is definitely someone that should be included in the process, especially if we're going to evaluate the current standing of the curriculum, because he works extensively on that. From the athletic piece, again, that's my main responsibility. And that will be a little bit easier.
Excellent. I know when I spoke with your group, we felt that athletics, music, drama covered between 70% and 80% of the student population.
Mhm.
So we were looking at grabbing a good chunk of kids and parents. The problem that we have right now in a need to get that message out to parents and the community is that a number of people who feel like marijuana is legal and therefore not a problem. And the fact that unless they're buying their marijuana through a regulated dispensary and they're getting it on the street, there's no guarantee that it's not laced with something more dangerous. And so it's the recreational drug users who may have a bad outcome through just to have fun, but at the same time, if it's not necessarily we're looking at just addicts, we're looking at, and it may be something that the parents are participating in as well. But it's important to give them that information.
Heidi, could I just add one additional point? And this, in the fall football season, we have, 5 or 6 home games at the stadium that attracts quite a few people from the community and outside the community. And I can tell you that over the last year and a half, the policing of vaping and marijuana use has risen tremendously over the last year and a half, 2 years. And we've had to address a handful of situations over that 10 to 12 game period over multiple years. So, I mean, I think it extends beyond the school day as far as student athletes, band, music and drama. It extends to community and community events. Obviously, I don't see it as much when inside the gymnasium at the high school for basketball. But there are people that do walk in smelling pretty ripe as far as, yes. And again, the use at outdoor events is the policing of that gets more and more difficult with the bigger crowds and with the event management that we have that I'm comfortable with. You just need so much more to be able to, to kind of take care of that piece.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Dave?
Over the last month, we've had some, what I think are tremendously meaningful conversations regarding where our focus should be in town. And clearly started off with the side over here. Some good conversation regarding where the big numbers, big win comes from. And that's what we started to focus on, schools. And this is really, it's a shame, because here we are trying to do work in schools that probably is not being done at home for whatever the reason. And we're trying to fill that void, and here we go, have to put more responsibility on the schools, but unfortunately, it appears that that's where the biggest wins can be, if we put that focus on. We've had conversations with the chief, school department, Andrew, et cetera, and I am completely convinced that this money that we're getting, can be wisely spent, properly spent, on programs, on individuals, on leadership, through the town and through schools, to get, more, focus on, programs, be it wellness or policing or whatever it is, into our schools. And I think that, it can be money well spent. It's out there, and I think that, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's an absolute top priority, aside from all the other things we can do, but it's doable. And the rules, it seems that the rules of how we spend the opioid money can be properly spent in schools as well. And we just need to do our homework to make sure.
I mean,
And
and Mr. Tattlebaum, if I can just add something, I know that, in our conversations, I mean, you know, statistics show that kids who are involved in extracurricular activities, and feel an attachment to the school beyond the school day, really feel that more of a sense of belonging. And again, I know that I spoke to, you know, the other piece of it where, you know, kids are very overscheduled and over involved and very stressed. But I also speak to the other side of it where the sense of belonging is so huge in public education right now, that if every single student can have that attachment to something positive, you know, the odds are they're not going to kind of deviate.
School program, we've eliminated.
Mhm.
And these poor kids, that they're going home on their own to an empty house. And we maybe simple programs, that could add some kind of quality to it. But that's to be determined. But I think we have to be careful not to just put this back on the school, and how we get the funding and what to do. There's a way to do this and do it, get it started. And there's billions of dollars being looked at and they spend all over the country. And who's doing a better job, and whose good idea can we use, because the money's there in every single community, everywhere.
Maura, you were kind of.
Just, two resources that were offered by the opioid abatement office were, as far as curriculum, one is called Safety First. And the other one is called Hope, and that's out of Tufts University, and they do their ACE and PACE model. So those two resources.
Could you please repeat that? You got muffled at the end. Which were the two?
One's called Safety First,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one's called Hope, and it's out of Tufts University. And they use the ACE and PACE model. I haven't looked into them at all, but that was a conversation that we had with one of the reps.
Okay. I'll look into those two. I'm sure that they're science-based, research-based, programs, curriculum. So, okay, thank you.
So I know ACE is the adverse childhood, but I'm not familiar with PACE.
I'm not positive.
Oh,
So it's right
oh,
back.
because I know.
Yeah, but I know ACE too,
But
yeah.
I know ACE and trace is trauma. so
Right,
PACE
it's
is
trauma.
positive.
Okay.
You know, come out the other end on a positive note, so.
Acronym next.
Yeah, well, excellent. That certainly, and I will investigate as well. Because we had talked previously about having a resource where the kids would be comfortable, someone that the kids would come to. And I know you have an SRO, you have, guidance, you have a school adjustment counselor, you have a number of, I know Dolores goes up to the building as well. So we certainly don't want to replicate something that's happening, but we do want to look at, you know, how we can support. Dave also brings another point which aligns with the strategic plan work that we're doing in the school department, which I know Andrew's a part of, I'm a part of, Dave's a part of. And one of the things they were looking at is after-school resources at the middle and elementary schools. So that certainly can be something that going forward, we can look at, how do we engage our students? And that's a conversation I think that I know the school department's having at the middle school. that in the past, the after-school program would be something supported by the PTO. When funds for the school department were not accessible. So we need to look at, how do we make those commitments could you just tell me what's happening in health at the middle school or wellness? Curriculum wise.
So their wellness program, I guess the structure of it is very similar to what we have at the high school, where it's a kind of a shared responsibility between the health and physical education. And again, we do a lot with, we talk about the substance, we talk about the anatomy and physiology, as far as, reproduction. And again, I know that those are some topics, especially with the new standards that we're trying to work through and solidify. We also had an internet safety piece that was in there. We do talk about, again, the risky behaviors such as the substance abuses and vaping and so on and so forth. So it's a wide variety in a very short period of time, that we have established. And again, one of the things that I really want to amplify is we're currently in a process of updating our curriculums, aligning with the new standards. Now, of course, the new standards put out by the state of Massachusetts. So, I mean, we do have a lot of what we do can fit into those new standards. And of course, there'll be other things that we'll need to address and include that is a little bit more robust in certain areas. And like I said, we're going through that process right now. Obviously, the high school is a little bit easier than the middle school and elementary school, just based on, 2 years of it. You have an established person in said building that oversees and responsible for that curriculum piece, where in the elementary and the middle, we're still going through some processes and some of the standards that are now established in the state it can be controversial, and we're working to see exactly how we want to approach it.
I think
We're still lucky to be in Massachusetts.
I think it's important to always focus on that. This is not dumping a problem on our schools. This is a town problem. It's a residence problem. It's every single buddy who lives in town. And they're all these resources we have to help contribute. But I think it's pretty clear that reaching the most amount of people with the most amount of effectiveness is going for our schools. But it's our job as a town to help make that happen. Now, not to say there's things being done already, which of course around we want to replicate either. But on the other hand, it's a coordinated effort. I think it can be very meaningful.
In my 25 years experience in doing this, as far as the health and phys ed piece, between 5th grade and 10th grade are, this is just my own opinion, between 5th grade and the beginning of 10th grade is really that spot where you might have some kids that are on the fence, easily influenced. You have a lot, self-esteem building or issues with self-esteem and sense of belonging. And so that's a 4 to 5 year gap of time that, in my experience, I've seen negative things developed during those ages. And again, my personal opinion.
Yeah, I would concur with you, Andrew, and I see that as being that evolution of independence, the level of independence that happens at the middle school, and that changing from neighborhood schools where families are very involved in who those friendships are. That changes, the dynamic changes when you go to the middle school, and it just sort of snowballs. And if kids are involved in any extracurricular activity once they leave sort of those town leagues, and they get into regional leagues or dance companies that pull from a variety of areas. Now you're just, exponentially exposing, those same teams to.
The irony is that based on the kid needed the most at fifth and sixth grade, we pulled the most amount of programs and reduced the funding.
So,
Maybe this is a good time we could change it.
yeah, and I would love, so I'm sorry, I just wanted to kind of.
No, into Heidi's point, those transitional years between fifth and sixth grade and eighth and ninth grade are huge, because those are the times where the kids start to attract to certain social groups. And depending on, again, how much structure they have in their lives, things that they're involved with or in, really dictate where they gravitate to. And again, I think that's an important piece too.
And that's something I wanted to look into. One of the things when I got hired here, like each year I wanted to try to work on something. And one of the things I still want to work on is some type of peer-to-peer mentoring type of program. Middle school and high school, but had the high school, some students maybe mentor some of the middle school students mentor the elementary school students. So I think there's a way that can be incorporated also, because let's just be honest, sometimes hearing it from your peers, you may hear it more, or you may take it to heart more than hearing it from adults. But definitely have the adults be part of that program, but try to put some of the power back into the hands of some of these young kids who are like, hey, this is not the path that I want to go down, or I see this happening to my friends, how can I help? So that is something I'm definitely wanting to look into. I know there's a counselor at the high schools interested in, and we just have to try to figure out how to do it. But maybe there's a way that we can incorporate this with the opioid abatement funds to kind of get that kick-started, find out where that's been successful throughout the United States, and maybe we can have something like that here.
Mm-hmm. There was already some conversations about, because we just started a captain's council at the high school this past year.
Okay.
And, I thought it went very well. I do think there was some areas that we could explore or expand on. We did meet with one of the elementary schools in the springtime. They were having some issues during recess with the competitiveness with some of the third and fourth graders. And we're going to have some of our kids go down and kind of referee and supervise and start those mentorships with those kids. Unfortunately, the ones that were probably able to do it in their schedule already had internships lined up. So it's something that you'd have to really have organized going into a school year so things can be incorporated in scheduling.
Definitely.
Certainly sounds like an idea for an after-school program.
And it could be too, and I'm also too, and I'm just gonna put it out there and be honest, I'm not just looking at the kids who are on honor society or honor roll. I'm looking at a vast array of different students, because if you're just looking at those students to be the ones that are mentoring, then that leaves out other students. So I'm looking at inclusivity also when I do that, but that's a good idea. I mean, to start the talks now, it's not gonna happen in the fall, but we can at least start the talks now to try to maybe get something on board for at least the next school year, we can have it running. Okay.
The other thing I wanted Dolores to talk about was offering training for youth mental health first aid.
Yes.
Which is something that we would be looking at getting some of the school personnel involved in.
Yes, so I am a trained, I'm trained in youth mental health first aid. So I'm actually able to train adults on how to recognize the signs of if a child is experiencing some type of mental health crisis or needs some type of support. So I think I reached out to Jim Kiley and to the superintendent to say, hey, that I've been trained to do this. I'm willing to offer this to the schools. My certification runs out in September, so I'm able definitely to do it either in person, hybrid, or via Zoom. And with the opioid abatement funds, that is part of one of their strategies too. The funds can be used to train adults in first aid, youth first aid, I can't even talk right now.
It's mental health first aid. Yeah, the company is out of New Jersey.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I thought, Andrew, and I'm so glad that you're on screen today, because I thought that not only is this something that would be beneficial to, guidance in the social work department, But I'm thinking of your, coaches.
Yeah.
You know, because they're dealing with kids, whether they're, have performance anxiety or, nutrition is an issue or performance enhancing drugs is an issue or, injuries and how they're coming back from an injury. But I thought that maybe that's also a group that would benefit from some training.
Well, they're the ones that have the contact with the kids every day and
Yeah.
more apt to share some things with coaches than you would with other adults.
Yeah, and the training is, like, if it's on Zoom, it's between like 5.5 and 6.5 hours, so it can be, broken down as far as doing it over the course of one day or break it down and do it over 2 days. So, there's many options to it. But we felt, I just presented it to Heidi to let her know that I am certified, so I'm willing to offer that. Free of charge, just the books will have to be paid for, but that can be, the funding can pay for the books, for the people who attend, but that's it.
So it is something that I'm going to, be working with, Dolores at looking at how we can offer that. I'm looking at the structure of the school department and when can we steal a release time day? And how can we get that, for coaches?
Mhm.
And personnel, so, we're also, and I was back at work, as you know, Andrew, and for the school department, but I am now off, retired again. And, this time it might stick. So I will be meeting with Chris Vitale and, HR, Denise. I always have to think of that, to look at the possibility of this position that we've been bantering around for over a year, of getting someone that would be the, sort of the touch point for not only the opioid abatement funding, but also a touch point for someone to call when there's a need and someone to access, speakers and resources for the high school and middle school.
So just like one piece on that, so I know when they're on the agenda, we're gonna be talking about the Dartmouth committee, and I think this will tie very well into that discussion. I think one of the discussions for an upcoming select board meeting would be with regards to how we want that structured and where that would fit in the overall operations of the town. Just my own take on it is, I do believe it should be a town employee. Just after I kind of had some time to sit on it and think about it. The fact that it is going to be something that, as it's been discussed, will serve as more or less a program administrator as part of one of their functions of that job. But in addition to that, it's also gonna be someone who is looking at other funding opportunities that are out there and really leveraging the funds that we have so that, we're talking about a lot of great ideas.
Right.
But it's a lot easier to spend the money sometimes than it is to get the money, make sure that we can keep this momentum going for years to come, so. I would say with HR and we have the opportunity to sit down. I already kind of given a heads up that that's something that we're exploring, for future budget discussions. But with that, coming up with a draft job description for the select board's consideration. And how that be structured, how it could be funded, or phasing of funding potentially. But that is something that I think would be very beneficial to really be able to take these ideas and run with them and be able to create a structure, which I can kind of talk about under that next item on the agenda.
Well, because, in all honesty, if the current paid employees sitting around the table already have a job, and the volunteers sitting around the table, which looks like that to me, don't have the skill set to do this piece, so that's why we need someone who does. Yeah,
And that's what you were saying, like a paid employee, like hiring someone who has the expertise to do this.
This responsibility is a very big responsibility to fall on a volunteer who's, coming here and, offering their time. In addition, the scope of it, I would say, seems to be a little too big to build into an existing job description.
Correct.
And also, again, depending on how the board feels and wants to fund it. We do have opioid funds, but again, if you don't have those funds, this is something that we have to discuss as part of the annual budget process, so. There's just some conversations there that need to happen in terms of, the vision, the plan.
And I'll go back to proposing this position almost a year ago, was that looking at it being primarily funded through our grant with a percentage paid for by the town, and then every year more on the town, less on the grant, more on the town, until it becomes completely absorbed into a town position.
Yeah, so I think when the time comes, we could, look at that and create something for consideration before the whole select board, but I think, in terms of the work with this committee, I think having that one person is definitely critical to start spending these dollars, for sure.
I would just like, I think we need to be careful that we don't use all of our funds for the position.
Agreed.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
We need to talk about.
Yeah, and that's when it kind of comes time for funding, it's, like Tyrese point is, as much money as physically possible, we want to be out there providing programs for services, Ideally, the less that we can rely on funds for administrative expenses, that would ultimately be our goal. Understanding we need to have some money for administration of these programs, but the more that we can leverage outside funding sources to supplement what we have to, even if we do end up having to spend some money on admin costs, we can replenish our accounts and hopefully keep us going.
And that was, to my piece on, although the funds may go away, the needs may not. And educating, right now, when we initially got the funds and the Sackler family, et cetera, were sued, it was all about, overprescribing, misprescribing medications. The issue is the change now to pill manufacturing, which has nothing to do with, the actual industry. It's fake pills being made with a variety of chemicals being sold as Percocet or something else, which pill manufacturing has nothing to do with actual dosing of pharmaceuticals. So we're now battling something completely different, and fentanyl is different than Sackler was not involved in that, and so we're already out of the gate. And but the problem has been started. And to me, it was started with the overprescribing and misprescribing of drugs. That being said, and Andrew, I just want to let you know, I emailed you both of those programs that Maura mentioned, Safety First and Hope.
Okay, thank you.
And it's best. So the other piece that I want to talk about, because I also think that this is important, is educating our seniors.
Yes.
So now, more and more, when seniors are getting prescriptions for opioids, they're also getting Narcan at the pharmacy. Or they're being told that they can get Narcan, and maybe they don't understand why they want to have Narcan. But that's a whole nother group that we need to talk to, because whether they're coming off of surgeries themselves or have a chronic condition where they need to take medication, if they're not taking their medication appropriately, storing it, I myself have, I know what day it is because I know which pills I'm taking because I have my little strips. But I have my very best friend hers are on her gray tote, and she, as you're talking to her, will open one bottle and take something out and open another bottle, and it makes me crazy. Because are you sure you didn't already take that? It's one thing if you're putting them out and say, I have, 4 pills that I'm supposed to take, these are the colors of them. but when you're chit chatting with me and taking them out,
I don't mind it.
yeah, I'm in a Narcan right there.
Take it on, can I take you on? Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and I can't, get her, and I think this is, I'm using her, but there's also my mother. Who are just, may mistake their medications because they're not using something, or it's a new medication. And if one pill works, maybe 2 pills would be better, and that's a problem.
We've also seen people who are missing medication because family members are coming in. And I heard this is going back a few years, that one of the insurance companies was actually requiring, people who were prescribed, say, oxycontin.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Oxycontin, that they needed to be drug tested to make sure that the drugs were in their system and that they weren't refilling the prescriptions. I bet they did.
They still do that for adults, for the kids.
Yeah, yeah.
So do we still have those lock boxes that we had?
No.
We have
We probably can buy some of those, then, I mean, that can be part of it.
Because we had gotten lock boxes.
Yeah.
And distributed those through that office, which it's for exactly that reason. You have medications that only you should be taking.
Yes.
And sadly, I do know, if a family goes to hospice, and I will say the rules on hospice have really changed, but they come in now and count every pill and every syringe. When the patient dies, they want to know what you gave, and, if you gave 2 syringes of medication, then they should be getting X number back, and that's been a lot of misuse.
That whole generation too, that was overprescribed, in their mid to late 40s, early 60s, and everybody was coming to the methadone was on that age range, so they're pushing that into 60, 61, 62.
And medication-assisted treatment
Yeah.
is a viable option for some people. But again, I'll have
The
to
same
use
story,
them.
it was an injury,
Yeah.
prescribed this, got addicted to it, and
Or they have injuries, doctors are no longer.
Yeah, or they're looking to get it.
Other alternatives.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the doctor won't prescribe it.
A lot of them all got addicted in the early 2000s.
So when the time comes, right, and you're looking at the different program options available, it's really gonna be the town through this person, to set up a structure for it in terms of the expenditure. So some of it is gonna be set aside for staff training program, or goods here, right? Some of it is gonna be set aside for community services, some of it is gonna be set aside for a piece for educational services. We were talking today earlier about program within the schools, some of it could be set up as hey, put in your proposal if you're a teacher or provider in school with your program idea for the after school programs, just like they do currently do the fiscal process. And, for those type of programs, it would just be up to $10,000. And we don't have to go through procurement for that piece of it, if it's for individual programs for teachers. So I think when the time comes, what that formula is about, is this a annual thing that you apply to? Is this a multi-year service? I think all that could be developed by, that point person for the town. And with the understanding and approval from the board of, this is how much we're gonna make available for town programs, or town education. This is how much we're gonna be making available for the general community, and not saying this is a specific program per se, but saying this is how much we're gonna make available for RFPs and submissions from service providers. And then, as I think I mentioned in previous meetings is, we could also do a pilot program to start, right at the very beginning, where just seeing how it's gonna work out. And when the time comes, the town could do a pilot program and say, hey, based on the feedback, based on the number of responses from firms, based on the number of people we're able to help, maybe, you know, the board decides that they want to retweak the formula or allocation of the funds. You know, I think there's a lot of programs and resources that we do today, but I think until we have that structure in place and how we're going to make those funds available to either our staff, schools, service providers, it's gonna be really hard to pin down what is within our power to do. So, and then that kind of goes to the next topic, and, you know, unfortunately, I have to step out at 2:30, but I did want to make sure that I could share my findings in regards to the DAART committee and the structure, if we're, I don't want to go to the next step, because,
No, go ahead.
okay, on the committee itself, you know, there's a little bit of nuance with regards to what's considered a public body, open meeting versus what's internal workings. Really where it draws the line is, you know, if there's a working group or a group that is serving an advisory role, and you're not giving them decision-making authority, that's really where the difference lies. So as an example, let's just say that we do have a person for this activity, and the one person, you know, develops a scope of work for the program and meets with, you know, this interdepartmental group and says, here's what I'm thinking, what do you think? If the group is just there to say, yeah, I would change this, I'd change that, maybe you wanna do this, and that recommendation is taken under advisement, right? Then that, in my mind, can occur behind the scenes and doesn't require this to be a public body. Now, if this group is saying, no, we want a vote, and we want to say, you know, we want to be part of that decision on how that, you know, formula is outlined, and, you know, we want to be a majority or whatever, right? Then it would be a public body. Then we'd be making a formal recommendation, you know, to again go to the board for further consideration, but, you know, I could see it, you know, occurring both ways. Certainly, there's pros to just having it be an internal working group. I think when it comes to the overall administration, I think having someone come with everything ready to go, if you will, and just saying, hey, are there any issues for you? There are any pitfalls, any issues that you see here, or any considerations I should take on this? You know, then more or less it's just, again, taking that recommendation from the various stakeholders under advisement and then bringing it to the select board for the final.
Okay. So we had to find an approval.
Because ultimately, that's what we need for a program like this is, you know, the program manager, let's call them, would develop that structure for the program like I was just talking about, you know, scoring criteria, and all that would be brought to the board, and you would say, yes, you know, we like how we're being scored, we like the distribution of how the funds being allocated among these various sources. And when the time comes to make those awards, it would come before the board to issue those awards, right? So
Come before the select.
the select,
Yeah,
because really what it is, it's a grant, right? So my recommendation would be at that point, how it could work is, you know, the scoring criteria is very straightforward. Time comes, goes to the board. And this program manager could say, based on the criteria, here's the recommendations. Now, what I will say is if the board said, no, we want an intermediary board to score the proposals and make recommendations, then this board would have to be a public body. But if it's just saying, hey, we're comfortable with having that person administer the program, similar to a certain degree how I manage the home capital, right? Is I have program terms that outlines qualifications, if you will. And you know, I administer that without having really board oversight for an internal committee, if you will. So, I mean, that's something.
You know, I certainly don't wanna add a bureaucratic layer that is not necessary. But I do feel that our discussion and our work is meaningful. And I still think that there's a value to not knowing who would fill in this role, to guiding their work.
And I think to that point is, I think there's gonna be a little bit of a difference between guiding work, in which case that is gonna be an appointed board, and advising or informing about, sharing of information, if you will. I think it could go two different ways where, again, there's the internal working group that could deal with this just collaboration, education, hey, we're sharing information about activities that are going on, resources available. And then there could be if, again, you want to retool what DART is and maybe the charge of DART, maybe that could even be a little more specific to the scoring and the review of the proposals and making the scoring criteria and grading them. That's another direction to go with it.
So this is what I'm thinking you're saying, is that the position that would be created
Yes,
wouldn't just be handling DART issues. They may be handling other community service based, so it's a full-time position,
that's correct.
including, a lot of different issues where this team may be able to sit and advise on the DART.
That's correct.
So, but they would be so basically full-time.
Yes. I was, like I said, I think the line is drawn where if the charge of that committee is given authority over a function versus, again, just providing support to the professional staff who's executing that function. That's where I would say, what is really the will of this body, and ultimately what's gonna be the will of the board and your vision for this team. Because I can see, again, both having their own pros and cons.
I don't want the position to become so encompassing that nothing gets done. And I mean, that can happen too. Handling DART and other issues. I just don't want the position to be.
Yeah, and I think if that's the direction that we as a town need to go. We can work on a potentially draft job description and say, how would this position work with the other departments and members of our team at internally? What would sort of a day in the life of look like? I think that there are, regardless of departments, there's a lot of crossover.
Yes.
In terms of projects, issues that we deal with, people have questions that might touch multiple departments in general, so I see this assigning this program to one of them where, again, it could go 10 different ways. I guess really where I would focus in on in terms of the decision is who do you want making the final decision, the final recommendation on the distribution of the funds. Ultimately, it's gonna be the select board, but is there anyone else before that would need to be able to have the authority to make a certain decision? In terms of scoring committee,
And what,
I don't know of another. I'm just trying to think of another group that goes directly to the select board. I think things like this go through another board or recommendations
I would say there's not many programs, at least that I'm aware of, that, and I know there's like the betterment through the betterment program through the Board of Health. There's a home rehab program that I administer. There's the grant fundings and these like case of assistance with COA, their seniors. In those, I don't believe there's really an intermediary board that's reviewing those. If you recall the home rehab, we had that discussion, that whole program outline, I brought to the board for consideration in terms of the structure of it. With that said, to that point, I suppose is that CPC with the funding agency, so it's a little different in that sense, just because, I did present kind of how we're gonna administer to them,
Right,
but here it's town funds, so.
also look at that as that was a function that has been a function, I guess, and a function in other communities, whereas this is all new stuff.
Yeah, and I always put this way, no, I don't think there's
Right or wrong way,
right and wrong way,
Yeah.
it's, how.
how do we move forward?
Yeah, what do we have in terms of capacity, in terms of our governmental structure to be able to, make it a good fit for our employees, but, I think we can certainly have additional discussions on the DAART piece of it. But I at least wanted to come today and provide that distinction between what we may be able to do, internally as a working group. And versus hosting meetings, having to be a public meeting.
Because you need to have someone that's responsible for doing that, so I'm just gonna jump in, because right now, if we have it as a public meeting, we have to make sure that we follow the rules and regulations, so you still have to have an entity that is responsible for doing all of that, and making sure that we don't fall into the category of, not following open meeting laws.
Yeah, I will say, the time comes where the town goes down the route of maybe looking at a position internally. One of the expectations would be that position.
We'll do it.
Would be managing the requirements of a public body, right? So if that's the case, then that is not so much a concern. It's just workflow, right? It's just an administrative review.
I have a question just because I'm very naive on this. How easy or how quickly can you get a new job approved by the select board? Is there like a process or a time of year where you put forth, like, if, the Board of Health wanted to add someone and Amy wanted to add some? So is there a process that happens, or does it?
Well, it just happened, it's called town meeting.
Yes.
So some boards and some departments have unfilled positions. And so if somebody said, we want to move forward with this position, and we already have the funding. So this is something, and this is why I had proposed it to use funding initially and then move it towards, is because it's not anywhere in anyone's budget. So we need to prepare that, and we need to have, moving forward, have a good plan for this person and using the funds, because we're proposing a position that does not exist in a time where, on the other hand, we're saying these are very tight fiscal times.
Right, and if that person was just going to cover DART, I can see that happening, but now we're talking about them answering to other bodies in our town. So that it kind of involves towns moving more out of things. Because we're not the only ones, I would think I don't feel that DART should be funding a position full-time that's not focused on DART time.
Right.
So that's,
Yes.
then I don't know what happens.
Yeah, so the funding formula itself, that's ultimately when a draft job description or an RFP, like I said, that's kind of my thoughts on it. When that's developed, what's the percentage of responsibility, and the dollars would speak to the percentage of responsibility.
Right, and then certain steps, especially then how can you get that position approved quickly, since now we're using other funds, not just DART.
So, I mean, that's something we go through a regular budget process. You know, in certain cases, there's mid-year adjustments that we look at in the fall. Whether or not we as a town board would be in a position to make a decision that soon. I can't speak to that, you know, but what I would say is the time that we have now. Really honing in on what we would need in terms of job function, job responsibility. Just again, based on everything I've heard in the last few meetings, it's at least for one of the big responsibilities would be being a program manager. An administrator.
Yeah, and couldn't that in the beginning, let's just be honest, it doesn't have to be like a town employee position. Could it not be something like a contract and that can always move towards like a permanent position. So starting out of the gate doesn't necessarily have to be a town employee right now. It can elevate towards that, but right now in our immediate need, if we're looking like to put a job description together and what we're looking for this function for DART, could we start it out as being like maybe a contract position that could potentially move into something else?
The town of Falmouth hired someone in 3 months, that was it, it was an endpoint to that person's time and their responsibilities, and then they did a lot of data collection, they had town meetings, they did focus groups, and so they collected a lot of the information of how the town should perform.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, a contract position is something, you know, we can look at the funding. That's gonna be our question.
Yes.
In terms of what we have to do. I would say that the more responsibility you put on a contract position, the less qualified people are gonna be able to.
Well, but that's,
every function. So that's not, again, that's something for another day.
yeah,
And you need to alter.
yeah.
Get rid of.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, and we did miss out about, for the International Overdose Awareness Day, I know things that we need to utilize for that, there's a pot to that. I will put it out here that I did reach out to New Bedford because last year they used funds from the IASA grant, which is for Greater New Bedford. I reached out to see if we can utilize some of the funds. That grant ends June 30th. The person I reached out to was going to speak to the person at the health department to see if there's a possibility if we submitted receipts before then for some of the things that we want to use for our event, if we can utilize those funds. Still waiting to hear back. I just got it.
How much money are you thinking you're gonna?
It's gonna be less than $200. But honestly, you could use through the opioid abatement funds, because we're gonna be doing some type of, maybe having, some of the boxes there or the syringe drop off, there's a way to incorporate that into utilizing the funds from the abatement funds for that, but it's less than like $200.
Right, and I mean, I'm looking at the stuff that we already have in existence.
Besides the flags and the things like that, things that we would, those were the things that we can keep in the banner that we can keep for years on. It's just the one-time cost of like $20 for the banner, $11 for the banner. So it's not that much. So that's where we are. Thank you, because I know that's coming up in August, so we just need to make a decision about it. If there's no way to make a decision, that's what I'm saying about voting.
Well, that's okay, because I think that's, we made a decision last year that we ordered the flags, the select board placed.
So we have
flags.
that.
We have $80,000 available to us.
We need to-
So, yes, and so we just have to figure out where the town has placed that. So
And
we
then
can
just
put those
submit.
orders in.
Okay, it's not. And
No.
this can be shared with the whole committee, like what the costs are.
Right, so the money is already sitting there.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes,
So you have, I mean, you don't have direct access to it,
No.
but if you purchase, you could submit for reimbursement to the select.
yeah, but we just wanted to make sure that the committee is aware, we need to be transparent about what it is that we needed.
The committee does what?
Yeah, no, so that's, okay. Okay, that's the
So
only.
we will adjourn this meeting. So that the motion to adjourn,
I make a motion to adjourn.
seconded by Laura, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.